But happening today, a lot of important things.
Yes.
The trade tariff deadline, the RFK vote, and also day 3 of the NTSB's fact-finding mission on that deadly midair collision over the Potomac River. Concerns over military helicopters is still very much top of mind in this federal probe.
During day 2 of the investigation, witnesses drew attention to those Army helicopters. They say training in the airspace near Reagan National has long been a concern because of such high congestion. The victims' families are still searching for answers.
I believe that there were several factors, not just the Black Hawk, but, the FAA. There was only one person in the tower that night. It was almost like a series of unfortunate events that led to this crash. And so I don't think that there's just one entity that is solely responsible.
Sunrise on the Hill's Trevor Shirley joins us now. Trevor, hi. What moved you most? What spoke to you most watching this hearing?
Well, just the fact that they had identified so many problems for so long and really nothing had been done about it, between staffing issues, concerns about how the Army operated in that airspace, to the use of pretty frequent use of just visual separation when the pilots of aircraft are only using pretty much their eyes to keep away from other aircraft. It just seemed like this was a confluence of events that ultimately led up to something that was easily avoidable.
So we heard from that family talking about the air traffic controller, one person being in the tower. That's been another point of discussion. Just, do you need more than one person to sort of track these guys and gals coming in and out on helicopters and airplanes? We also heard that there had been concerns that had been raised going years back about the staffing at DCA.
Yeah, and granted, that's part of a bigger issue with the FAA. They've been struggling to hire and retain air traffic controllers. It's not a job that you can just hire someone off the street and get them working the next week. It takes years of training. But to speak to, an air traffic control center in such a congested airspace here in the nation's capital, there were those points during the day where their policy was that they could only have one person on duty or one person handling air traffic or airplane traffic and helicopter traffic. And so, yeah, there is a lot of talk about whether they need to shift that policy to make sure that there's, more than one person handling that much traffic.
One of the fascinating things about this hearing has been watching to and listening to the NTSB board members ask questions and then respond with a kind of, I can't believe it.
Like an incredulity, yeah.
Yes,
they just can't believe that they keep having these issues that the people they're talking to say, well, yeah, this has been a problem for us for years, but nothing has happened. I mean, Jennifer Homendy, the NTSB chair, said, they would identify a problem, and I think at one point she said there were 21 bureaucratic steps that had to be taken to get something changed. I mean, it just kind of boggles the mind.
Yeah. All right, Trevor, thanks for joining us this morning. Thanks for tracking this throughout this week. It's really been insightful to talk to you every single day.
For sure.
Thanks,
so we know this crash killed 67 people, the deadliest plane crash in the U.S. since November of 2001. Well, this morning we are joined again by John Golia. He is a former member of the NTSB. John, thanks for joining us throughout the week.
Thanks.
We'll start the same way we started yesterday. What stood out to you about day 2, and what are you looking for on day 3?
Well, the thing that stood out the most was how firm and intense the NTSB was probing these issues. We've long known that every accident is a chain of events that have occurred. And the board members really probed into both the FAA and the military over their procedures or lack of procedures into flying this route, and the frustration that everybody has had within the air traffic control system, the people who are actually doing the work and their supervisors, over their inability to get any help from senior management with the FAA. And that also includes Congress, because of the funding issues that the FAA has had for the last 20, even 30 years. So it really was quite enlightening that the number of people who tried to get this system to improve in Washington National, but failed.
John, for the second day in a row, there were complaints about the attitudes and training of the military helicopter pilots. Yesterday, it came from a medevac helicopter pilot who's former military, who flew those Army and Air Force helicopters. What was it about his testimony that was so damning?
It was the policy issues. It was the ability for all these issues to fester without senior management addressing them. And they were being told repeatedly about these problems. They were being pleaded with by some of the pilots that fly these routes to deal with it. And they were unable. Now it's not clear whether it was their individual responsibility or if they passed it up the chain and the people above them were stonewalling it, so to speak. So it's really been an issue.
Speaking of,
It's festering for a long time.
well, speaking of issues that have festered for a long time, the Trump administration has talked a lot about increasing the air traffic control sort of pool that we have. I want to play some sound that we heard yesterday about concerns over staffing issues and get your reaction on the backside of it. Let's listen.
Concern of mine. I brought that to many attention. Every opportunity I had, and at one point I was told to quit bringing it up.
Seems like that's a cultural problem, John.
It's definitely a cultural problem, but this shortage didn't occur overnight. It started a long time ago, and it was exacerbated by the FAA's attempt to go to the street and hire people, essentially ab initio, without training, and bring them into the FAA center in Oklahoma City and train them. But that center was never set up to train people from the street. Prior to that, they hired people that attended colleges that taught, as part of their college education, air traffic control. And that was the model we used for a long time. But then about 10 years ago, we changed it. And we started going to the street, but they never invested in the FAA training center to deal with people that were coming in the door without any training whatsoever. So then the training bogged down. It took much longer. Individuals took much longer time of coaching and experience in the training environment to get the skills necessary. And that just slowed down the replacement pool to a very great degree. So now we're reversing it. They're now starting to look back again at the schools that have air traffic control as a college class. However, many of the schools that we relied upon years ago have stopped because the jobs disappeared. But there are still schools like Emory-Riddle and Vaughn College in New York that's gearing up, and a few others that are now responding to this shortage and to help fulfill those positions with qualified people.
There's so much to talk about here. One is the fact that when the airport is really busy, those air traffic controllers are managing one plane a minute, which is almost impossible to imagine. And I'm curious, John, is it irresponsible to operate that many planes at a small airport like National that has to operate around restricted airspace?
Well, years ago when we started the construction on Dulles, one of the selling points was to reduce Washington National. And instead of that, Washington National is built up even bigger than what it was back then. So it's supposed to be 60 airplanes a minute on a runway, on an hour, excuse me, on a runway. We're running much higher than that. They just knocked it back down to 30 in and out an hour. And that's the reduced level that they're operating at right now. But they were much higher than that, 15, 20 additional airplanes per hour. If we're going to continue to operate Washington National Airport, we need to put a capacity limit on it. And nobody wants to do that, not Congress, not the people that live in the area. It's too convenient. But we really need to do that. And that will require the airlines to rethink their route systems and rethink how they and where they fly their airplanes to.
John, do you think that Congress should be moved to do something after almost 70 deaths there?
Congress responds to a lot of issues, many of them put in front of them by the press. So one of the things that I learned in my years in Washington, that a good, hard-hitting press system reporting deficiencies can go the extra mile in getting things done. So Congress responds to the pressures that the press can put on them and identifying problems and keep pressing them to do something about it.
John Goliath. John, thanks for joining us all
Thank
this week.
you.
It's been so helpful to talk to somebody who's actually been a part of these hearings before, so we really do appreciate you taking the time every morning.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much.